At my sister Emma's engagement party, surrounded by her fiancé Derek's wealthy family at their sprawling estate, I watched Dad destroy my reputation with 8 crushing words. When Derek's parents asked about my career, I opened my mouth to explain my classified government consulting work, but Dad jumped in first. His booming laugh echoed across the marble foyer as he announced I was just a meal kit delivery driver who drove around in a van. The humiliation burned through me as these influential people turned away, dismissing me completely. The crystal chandelier above cast dancing shadows across Senator Patricia Blackwood's perfectly composed face as she processed my father's announcement. Her husband, Judge Harold Blackwood, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and gave me the same look he probably reserved for petty criminals in his courtroom. The dismissal was swift and brutal. "How interesting," Senator Blackwood said with the practiced smile politicians use when they want to end conversations. "Meal delivery services are certainly convenient these days." She turned toward my sister Emma, whose cheeks had flushed pink with embarrassment. "Derek tells us you work in marketing, dear. Much more my speed." I stood frozen beside the mahogany side table, my untouched champagne flute growing warm in my trembling hand. 28 years old, and my father still treated me like I was 12 and brought home a failing report card. The truth was far more complicated than anyone in this room could imagine. For the past 5 years, I had worked as a highly classified cybersecurity consultant for the Department of Homeland Security. My specialty was election infrastructure protection, analyzing vulnerabilities in voting systems that could threaten American democracy. The meal kit delivery job served as perfect operational cover, allowing me to travel between secure government facilities without raising suspicion. Who would suspect a woman dropping off dinner ingredients of accessing the nation's most sensitive computer networks? But here in the Blackwood family's Connecticut estate, surrounded by oil paintings of distinguished ancestors and furniture that cost more than most people's cars, I was just Charlene, the delivery girl. My father, Robert, had built his entire understanding of my life around what he could see, which was me loading boxes into a white van every morning. "Charlene has always been practical." Dad continued, his voice carrying that tone he used when he thought he was being supportive. "Not everyone needs a fancy career. Someone has to keep America fed, right?" He chuckled at his own joke, completely oblivious to the way Emma was gripping Derek's arm like a lifeline. Judge Blackwood nodded politely and moved toward a group of lawyers discussing upcoming court cases. Senator Blackwood followed, her silk dress rustling against the Persian rug. Within seconds, I had been categorized, filed away, and forgotten. The networking opportunities I had hoped for at this gathering evaporated like morning mist. Derek squeezed Emma's hand and whispered something reassuring in her ear. My sister had been planning this engagement party for months, dreaming of impressing her future in-laws with our family's respectability. Now she looked like she wanted to disappear into the imported Italian marble floor. "Dad," Emma said quietly, "maybe we could talk about something else." But Robert was just getting started. He had found his audience among the other guests, and each retelling of my career became more elaborate. To the elderly woman admiring the garden, I became the girl who drives those little trucks with the recipe boxes. To the young corporate executives by the bar, I was doing the gig economy thing. You know how it is with kids these days. Each description felt like a paper cut, small but accumulating into genuine pain. I had dedicated my life to protecting the electoral process that kept America's democracy functioning. But to my own father, I was just another millennial who could not commit to a real job. The worst part was not being able to defend myself. My security clearance came with strict guidelines about discussing my work, even in vague terms. I could not mention the briefing rooms where senators sought my expertise, or the late nights spent tracking foreign cyber threats, or the commendations buried in classified files that would never see daylight. Derek's younger brother Marcus approached me during a lull in the conversation, his tech entrepreneur instincts clearly activated by something that did not add up. At 25, he had already sold 2 startups and had the sharp eyes of someone who noticed details others missed. Charlene Wright. He kept his voice low, glancing around to make sure we would not be overheard. I saw your phone when you set it down earlier. Those security protocols looked pretty sophisticated for a meal delivery service. Military-grade encryption, unless I'm mistaken. My pulse quickened. Marcus worked in cybersecurity himself and recognized government-issued devices when he saw them. I'm just careful about privacy, I said, trying to keep my response casual. He studied my face for a moment, longer, clearly skeptical. Sure, privacy is important. But before he could press further, his mother called him away to meet some family friends, leaving me alone with questions hanging in the air like smoke. The evening continued with me relegated to the edges of conversations, watching Emma sparkle in the attention that should have been her night all along. She moved gracefully between groups of guests, her blonde hair catching the light as she laughed at their stories and answered their questions about wedding plans. This was her element, and she belonged here in a way I never would. As dinner was announced, I caught my reflection in the ornate mirror near the dining room entrance. I looked exactly like what people expected from a delivery driver: simple black dress, minimal jewelry, practical shoes for walking to front doors all day. The irony was that this carefully constructed image had helped me blend into neighborhoods where foreign agents might be conducting surveillance, but tonight it just made me invisible. The final insult came as we moved toward the dining room. Judge Blackwood asked Derek about his work at the prestigious law firm, and Derek launched into an impressive description of corporate cybersecurity consulting. The judge listened with the respect due to someone protecting business interests, nodding approvingly at Derek's expertise. Meanwhile, I helped my father navigate around other guests, listening to him tell yet another stranger about my little delivery route, and how proud he was that I had found something steady even if it's not glamorous. The contrast between Derek's reception and mine could not have been starker, and Emma noticed every painful detail. The twist that would change everything was already in motion, though none of us realized it yet. The dining room table stretched longer than my entire apartment set, with china that probably cost more than my van. Senator Blackwood had positioned herself at the head with Judge Blackwood to her right, and the rest of us arranged by some invisible hierarchy that placed me near the far end between Marcus and an elderly uncle who kept confusing me with the catering staff. The conversation flowed around topics I could have contributed to meaningfully if anyone had thought to include me. Foreign policy challenges, cybersecurity threats to infrastructure, the growing sophistication of international hacking attempts. These were subjects I dealt with daily in classified briefings, but here I might as well have been furniture. Emma glowed at Derek's side, finally relaxed as the focus shifted away from family embarrassments and toward wedding planning. Senator Blackwood was suggesting venues with the authority of someone accustomed to making important decisions, and Emma hung on every word like gospel. The country club has excellent security. The senator was explaining, which is important for guests in sensitive positions. We've hosted several diplomatic events there without incident. Dad nodded eagerly, clearly thrilled to be included in conversations about security and diplomacy. If only he knew that his daughter regularly briefed officials far more senior than anyone at this table, he might have understood the bitter irony of his excitement. The shift came without warning. Senator Blackwood's secure phone buzzed against the table, its distinctive encrypted ringtone cutting through the dinner conversation like an emergency siren. The device was larger than civilian phones with additional security features I recognized immediately. Every head turned toward the sound, but only I understood what type of call required that level of protection. "Excuse me," Senator Blackwood said, rising smoothly from her chair. "I need to take this privately." But as she stepped toward the adjacent study, her voice carried back to our table, despite her efforts to speak quietly. The acoustics in these old estates were unpredictable, and every word reached us with startling clarity. "Yes, Mr. Secretary, I understand the urgency," she said, her professional composure cracking slightly. "How many states are we talking about, seven dear God?" The table fell silent. Even Judge Blackwood looked concerned, setting down his wineglass with unusual force. Derek reached for Emma's hand instinctively, while Marcus leaned forward with the intense focus of someone whose business dealt with exactly these types of emergencies. The infrastructure vulnerabilities are that extensive. Senator Blackwood continued, her voice rising despite her attempts at discretion. And this happened during the weekend when most security teams are minimal. This is precisely what we warned about in committee. My blood ran cold as I processed the implications. A coordinated attack on multiple state election systems during a low staffing period suggested sophisticated foreign actors with detailed knowledge of American administrative schedules. This was the nightmare scenario we had wargamed in classified sessions, but never expected to face in reality. Yes, we need our best people immediately, the senator continued. The midterms are only weeks away, and if this compromises public confidence in the electoral process— Her voice trailed off as she moved further from the dining room. The silence at our table stretched uncomfortably. Judge Blackwood cleared his throat and attempted to resume normal conversation, but the damage was done. Everyone had heard enough to understand that something serious was happening to America's voting systems. When Senator Blackwood returned 5 minutes later, her face was ashen despite her attempt to maintain composure. She sat heavily in her chair, the weight of whatever she had learned visible in the new lines around her eyes. "I apologize for the interruption," she said, though her voice lacked its earlier confidence. "There's been a significant cybersecurity incident affecting election infrastructure in several states. The Secretary of State's office is coordinating the response, and they need immediate consultation from our most experienced analysts." Derek straightened in his chair, his law firm's cybersecurity practice having prepared him to understand the seriousness of such attacks. "Is this related to foreign interference?" he asked, his professional instincts overriding social politeness. "That's the working assumption," Senator Blackwood replied grimly. "The sophistication and coordination suggest state-sponsored actors with advanced capabilities and inside knowledge of our vulnerabilities." My father looked around the table with the confusion of someone completely out of his depth. "But they can fix this, right? I mean, we have people for this sort of thing." Senator Blackwood nodded slowly. "We do. In fact, the Secretary specifically requested consultation from one of our top election security specialists, someone with unique expertise in defensive cybersecurity and infrastructure protection." She paused, looking directly at me with an expression I could not read. "The Secretary asked for Charlene Hoffman, the election security analyst we've heard so much about in classified briefings." The words hit the table like a physical blow. Every face turned toward me with expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. Emma's mouth fell open. Derek blinked rapidly as if trying to process conflicting information. Marcus leaned back in his chair with a knowing smile that suggested his earlier suspicions were being confirmed. But my father's reaction was the most painful to watch. He laughed the same dismissive chuckle he had been using all evening. "There must be some mistake," Dad said, looking around the table for support. "This is my daughter, Charlene. She drives a van. She delivers meal kits to people's houses. You've got the wrong person." Senator Blackwood pulled out her phone and showed the screen to my father. Even from across the table, I could see my official government photo next to a security clearance level that made several people at the table straighten up with recognition. "Charlene Elizabeth Hoffman," she read aloud. "Senior Cybersecurity Consultant, Department of Homeland Security. Specialized focus on election infrastructure protection. Top secret clearance with additional compartmentalized access. Current assignment involves analyzing vulnerabilities in state voting systems and developing defensive protocols against foreign interference." The silence that followed was deafening. My father stared at the phone screen like it was written in a foreign language, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and the dawning realization that he had been completely wrong about his daughter's life. Emma found her voice first, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Charlene, is this real?" I looked around the table at their stunned faces bound by classification restrictions that prevented me from explaining the full scope of my work even now. "I can confirm my identity," I said carefully, "though I can't discuss operational details. The admission sent shockwaves through the gathering. Judge Blackwood studied me with new respect, his earlier dismissal replaced by the attention he would give a fellow professional. Marcus nodded as if pieces of a puzzle were finally falling into place. But Derek's reaction surprised everyone most of all. Instead of shock, his face showed recognition, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "I've known about Charlene's real job for months," he said quietly, his words dropping into the silence like stones into still water. "I've been investigating her background for some of my firm's cybersecurity clients, and her reputation in government circles is extraordinary. I just assumed the family knew." This revelation hit Emma like a physical blow. Her fiancé had known something about her sister that she did not, and the betrayal of that secret knowledge was written across her face in hurt confusion. The moment crystallized everything wrong with how my family saw me and how the people around this table had dismissed me based on surface appearances. But it also marked the beginning of everything changing, whether I was ready for it or not. The phone in Senator Blackwood's hand buzzed again, and I knew my quiet life was about to end. My encrypted device vibrated against my thigh with the urgent pattern that meant immediate national security priority. The sound was barely audible, but Marcus caught it, and his eyes widened with recognition. Not many people outside government circles knew what that particular alert meant. "Excuse me," I said, standing from the table with practiced calm despite my racing heart. "I need to take this call." I stepped into the hallway, accepting the secure connection with my fingerprint. The voice on the other end belonged to Director Sarah Chen, my immediate supervisor, and one of the few people who understood the full scope of the election security crisis. "Charlene, thank God. Where are you right now?" Her voice carried the clipped urgency of someone coordinating a national emergency. "Connecticut, at a family event." I kept my voice low, conscious of the dining room full of people trying not to eavesdrop on a conversation they could not fully understand. "The situation is worse than we initially reported to the senator," Director Chen continued. "We're looking at penetration of voting systems in 7 swing states with evidence of data modification in at least 3. This isn't just reconnaissance anymore. They're actively preparing to alter vote tallies." My stomach dropped. Vote modification was the nightmare scenario that kept election security officials awake at night. Foreign actors. Preliminary analysis suggests a sophisticated state-sponsored group with detailed knowledge of American electoral infrastructure. They knew exactly which vulnerabilities to exploit and had prepared attack vectors for systems that most people don't even know exist. I closed my eyes, processing the implications. Inside knowledge. That's our working theory. Someone with high-level access has been feeding them information. We need you in Washington immediately. Your expertise in defensive protocols is critical, and your security clearance gives you access to the compartmentalized data we need to cross-reference. Through the doorway, I could see my family still frozen around the dinner table, my father staring at his hands like they might provide answers to questions he had never thought to ask. Emma kept glancing toward the hallway, where I stood her engagement party, hijacked by revelations that redefined everything she thought she knew about her sister. "How long do I have?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The van is perfect cover for immediate transport to Washington. No one questions meal delivery vehicles moving around at unusual hours. Can you leave within the hour?" I looked back at Emma, whose special night was crumbling around her. "I understand." When I returned to the dining room, the conversation died instantly. Every eye fixed on my face, searching for clues about what kind of call required that level of security and urgency. Senator Blackwood spoke first. "How serious is the situation?" "Serious enough that I need to leave for Washington immediately." I replied my words, causing Emma to flinch as if I had slapped her. "The attack is more extensive than initially reported, and they need specialized analysis that can't be delayed." My father finally found his voice, though it came out smaller than his usual confident tone. "I don't understand any of this. How long have you been lying to us?" The accusation hit harder than I expected. I haven't been lying, Dad. I've been protecting classified information that I'm legally bound not to discuss. The meal kit delivery job is real. It just isn't my only job. 5 years. I continued seeing the questions in their faces. I've held top secret clearance for 5 years working on some of the most sensitive national security issues in the country. The delivery job provides perfect operational cover for traveling to classified locations without attracting attention. Emma's voice cracked as she spoke. Why didn't you tell me? I thought we were close. Because classification levels exist for a reason, I said gently. The fewer people who know about sensitive work, the safer everyone stays. It wasn't about not trusting you. It was about protecting you. Derek cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. Charlene, there's something else you need to know. My law firm has been providing cybersecurity consulting to several state election offices over the past year. We've had access to detailed vulnerability assessments. The implication hit me like ice water. Which states? Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada. He replied, his voice growing quieter with each state name. Those were exactly the 7 states Director Chen had mentioned. The connection was too precise to be coincidental. Judge Blackwood leaned forward with the sharp attention of someone recognizing legal implications. Derek, are you saying your firm had access to the vulnerabilities that are now being exploited? I think so, Derek said miserably. We were hired to identify weaknesses so they could be fixed, but the information we provided was incredibly detailed. System specifications, access protocols, timing schedules for security updates. Senator Blackwood's face had gone pale. Who else at your firm had access to those assessments? The senior partners, obviously. Our cybersecurity team. Some of the consulting staff. Derek paused, realization dawning across his features. Oh, God. What if someone at my firm is involved? Marcus, who had been silent throughout this exchange, suddenly straightened in his chair. Derek, remember those meetings you mentioned last month? The ones with the consulting clients who spoke with accents? The Eastern European technology investors, Derek said slowly. They said they were researching American cybersecurity practices for legitimate business development. I felt the pieces clicking into place with horrible clarity. Derek, I need you to think carefully. Did these meetings happen before or after your firm's contracts with the state election offices? After, he whispered. They approached us specifically because of our government consulting work. They said they were impressed by our portfolio. The room erupted in urgent conversation as everyone tried to process the implications. Foreign agents had likely identified Derek's firm through its election security work, then approached them under false pretenses to gather the exact information needed for a coordinated attack. Senator Blackwood stood abruptly. I need to make some calls. This information changes everything about how we approach the investigation. But as she reached for her phone, Derek's device rang with an incoming call. He looked at the screen and his face went white. It's Mr. Volkov, he said, referring to one of the supposed investors. He's calling from an international number. Don't answer it, I said quickly, but Derek had already accepted the call, his lawyer instincts taking over. Hello, Mr. Volkov, Derek said, putting the call on speaker so we could all hear. The voice that came through was smooth-accented and carried an undertone of threat that made everyone at the table tense up. Mr. Blackwood, I trust you are enjoying your family's celebration. It would be unfortunate if anything were to interrupt such a happy occasion. Derek's hand trembled as he held the phone. What do you want? I think you know what we want. Your fiancé's sister has become involved in matters that do not concern her. It would be wise for her to step away from her current assignment. The threat was clear, and Emma gasped as she realized foreign agents knew about our family gathering our location and the fact that I had been called to investigate their operation. And if she doesn't, Derek asked, though his voice barely carried across the table. Then your charming engagement party might be the last happy memory your family shares together. The line went dead, leaving us staring at each other in the sudden silence. The attack on America's electoral systems had just become deeply personal, and everyone I cared about was now in danger. Senator Blackwood was already dialing emergency numbers, her voice sharp with command authority, as she requested immediate FBI protection for the estate. But I knew this was just the beginning. The people behind this attack had been planning for months, and they were not going to let one cybersecurity analyst stop them from undermining American democracy. The question was whether I could save both my sister and my country, or if I would be forced to choose between them. The FBI protection detail arrived within 20 minutes, their black SUVs surrounding the Blackwood estate like a defensive perimeter. Agent Lisa Rodriguez, a compact woman with sharp eyes and 15 years of counterintelligence experience, took control of the situation with military efficiency. "Everyone stays put until we can secure the perimeter and verify there are no immediate threats," she announced, though her attention focused primarily on me. "Ms. Hoffman, we need to debrief you on the current situation before you leave for Washington." Emma grabbed my arm as I started to follow Agent Rodriguez. "You're really leaving tonight at my engagement party." The pain in her voice cut through me like broken glass. This was supposed to be her perfect evening, the moment she officially joined a family that could open doors and create opportunities she had only dreamed about. Instead, it had become a nightmare of foreign threats and government secrets that made her feel like a stranger in her own life. "I have to," I said, knowing how inadequate the words sounded. "This is bigger than just Family M. If I don't go, people across the country might have their votes stolen or changed. Democracy itself is under attack." "Democracy," she repeated bitterly. "What about loyalty to your family? What about being here for me when I need you?" Dad stepped between us, his face still processing everything he had learned about my real career. "Charlene, I don't understand most of what's happening here, but that man on the phone threatened our family. Shouldn't you stay and protect us instead of running off to Washington?" The impossible choice crystallized in front of me: stay with my family and abandon my duty to protect the electoral process that millions of Americans depended on, or leave them potentially vulnerable while I tried to save the democracy that made their freedom possible. "The FBI will protect you," I said, though I could hear the uncertainty in my own voice. Agent Rodriguez and her team are highly trained for exactly this type of situation. Derek looked up from his phone, his face pale with shock. "Charlene, I've been going through my communications with Mr. Volkov's group. They didn't just ask about election security. They wanted specific details about vote counting procedures, audit protocols, and backup verification systems." "What did you tell them?" Agent Rodriguez asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to interrogating potential security breaches. "Everything," Derek admitted miserably. "I thought I was helping them understand American democratic processes for legitimate research. They said they were advising Eastern European countries on election modernization." Judge Blackwood closed his eyes as if in physical pain. "Son, you may have given foreign agents the exact roadmap they needed to manipulate American elections." The weight of that realization settled over Derek like a physical burden. He sank into one of the dining room chairs, his head in his hands. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just doing my job, trying to help clients who seemed genuinely interested in democratic reform." Marcus, who had been quietly working on his laptop throughout the crisis, looked up with new information. "I've been running background checks on the companies Mr. Volkov claimed to represent. None of them exist. The business addresses are fake, the registration documents are forged, and the supposed technology investments they mentioned are complete fabrications. Professional false flag operation," Agent Rodriguez confirmed. "These people have been planning this approach for months, possibly years. They identified your firm through public records of government contracts, researched your personal backgrounds, and created an entire fictional narrative to gain your trust." Senator Blackwood rejoined our group, her face grim after a series of secure phone calls. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. We've confirmed attempts to access voting systems in 12 states, now not 7. The attackers are accelerating their timeline, possibly because they know we're onto them. My encrypted device buzzed again, and I recognized Director Chen's emergency contact code. "I have to take this," I said, stepping away from the group. "Charlene, thank God." Director Chen's voice was strained with exhaustion and stress. "We've made a disturbing discovery. The attack vectors show detailed knowledge of security protocols that are only available to people with top-secret clearance. Someone in the government cybersecurity apparatus is feeding information to the attackers." A mole. The possibility had occurred to me, but hearing it confirmed made my blood run cold. "Almost certainly. We're looking at anyone who had access to the vulnerability assessments and classification schedules over the past 6 months. That's a short list, but it includes some very senior people." I thought about the people in the dining room behind me, particularly Senator Blackwood with her position on the Homeland Security Committee and access to exactly the type of information a mole would need. How do I know who to trust? "You don't," Director Chen said bluntly, "which is why your extraction to Washington needs to happen through unofficial channels. Use your meal kit van and avoid any government facilities until you reach our secure location. We can't risk the mole knowing your movements." What about my family? The threats were specific and credible. FBI protection is already in place, but Charlene, you need to understand something. If these foreign agents are willing to threaten American citizens on American soil, they're operating at a level of desperation that suggests their timeline is extremely compressed. Whatever they're planning is going to happen soon. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of impossible decisions. How soon? Election Day is in 72 hours. If they're going to alter vote tallies, it has to happen during the counting process, when systems are most vulnerable, and security staffing is focused on physical polling locations, rather than digital infrastructure. 72 hours to stop a foreign attack on American democracy while keeping my family safe from people who knew exactly where we were and what we cared about most. When I returned to the dining room, Agent Rodriguez was explaining security protocols to my family. Emma sat beside Derek, holding his hand while he stared at the table with the expression of someone whose world had collapsed. Dad listened to the agent's instructions with the focus of someone trying to understand a situation completely outside his experience. "I have to go," I announced, cutting through their conversation. "The situation is accelerating, and every hour we delay gives the attackers more time to perfect their approach." Emma stood up, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "This is really happening, isn't it? My sister is some kind of secret government agent, my fiancé accidentally helped foreign spies, and our family is under FBI protection because democracy is being attacked." "Yes," I said simply, because there was no point in softening the truth anymore. "And I'm the only person with the specific expertise needed to stop it." Marcus closed his laptop and stood as well. "Actually, you're not the only one. My company specializes in exactly this type of cybersecurity analysis. If you need help, I want to volunteer." "Marcus, no," Judge Blackwood said immediately. "This is too dangerous, and you're not trained for this level of threat." "With respect, Dad, my company has contracts with 3 of the affected states. I know their systems almost as well as Charlene does, and I have resources that might be useful." Marcus looked at me directly. "Besides, someone in this family should help fix what my brother accidentally broke." The offer was tempting, but bringing civilians into a counterintelligence operation violated every protocol I had been trained to follow. "I appreciate the offer, but this is too dangerous for someone without clearance." "Then get me emergency clearance," Marcus replied. "You said yourself that time is critical. My company's analysis tools and my knowledge of the affected systems could save hours or even days." Agent Rodriguez stepped forward. "Emergency clearance can be arranged for critical national security situations. It would take about 6 hours to process, but if his expertise is genuinely needed, we can make it happen." I looked around the room at my family, seeing them clearly for the first time in years. Emma, whose strength I had underestimated because she expressed it through emotional intelligence rather than technical expertise. Derek, whose mistake came from trusting people who exploited his desire to help. Dad, whose dismissal of my career came from love and concern rather than malice. And Marcus, whose offer to help represented exactly the kind of courage that made democracy worth protecting. "All right," I said, making a decision that would change everything. "Marcus, if you're serious about this, we leave together in 1 hour. Agent Rodriguez, please expedite his clearance. Dad, Emma, Derek, you stay here under FBI protection until this is resolved." "How will we know you're safe?" Emma asked, her voice small and frightened. "You'll know we succeeded if the election happens without interference," I replied. "And if we fail, it won't matter whether we're safe or not." The truth of that statement hung in the air as I prepared to leave my sister's engagement party to save American democracy. Outside, my meal kit delivery van waited in the driveway looking exactly like what everyone had believed it was until tonight. But now it would carry the hopes of a nation whose citizens had no idea how close they had come to having their voices stolen by people who saw democracy as nothing more than a system to be hacked and exploited. The hardest part was walking away from Emma's tears and toward an uncertain future where the stakes could not be higher. The drive to Washington took 4 hours through back roads that avoided major highways where government vehicles might be tracked. Marcus proved surprisingly adept at counter-surveillance techniques, his tech background having included security consulting for companies worried about corporate espionage. My meal kit van, loaded with legitimate delivery boxes to maintain operational cover, attracted no attention from late-night traffic. Marcus worked on his laptop throughout the journey using encrypted connections to access his company's analysis tools remotely. I've been cross-referencing the attack patterns with the vulnerability assessments my brother's firm provided. He said, his face illuminated by the blue glow of multiple data streams. The correlation is almost perfect. These attackers know exactly which systems to hit and when security monitoring is lightest. "Any idea how they got the assessment reports?" I asked, navigating around a slow-moving truck on the rural highway. That's the disturbing part. Derek's firm uses secure document management systems with access logging. Someone with administrator privileges downloaded every single election security file 6 weeks ago. The download happened from Derek's account, but he was in court all day that Thursday. His login credentials were compromised. The implications sent a chill through me. Professional identity theft suggests this operation has been in planning for months. They specifically targeted your brother because of his firm's government contracts, which means they knew about those contracts before they became public information, Marcus replied grimly. Someone told them which law firms to target. We reached the secure facility at 3 a.m, a nondescript office building in Virginia that looked like any other corporate complex. The underground levels, however, contained some of the most sophisticated cybersecurity equipment in the government, along with direct connections to election infrastructure across all 50 states. Director Chen met us in the lobby, her face showing the strain of coordinating a national security crisis on minimal sleep. "Charlene, thank God you made it safely. Marcus, your emergency clearance came through an hour ago. Welcome to the most important cybersecurity operation in American history." The command center buzzed with activity despite the early hour. Analysts worked at multiple workstations tracking attack vectors in real time across a wall of monitors that displayed election systems from coast to coast. The scope of the foreign operation was even more extensive than I had realized. "Show me the current status," I said, settling into a workstation that immediately recognized my biometric credentials. 14 states now show signs of intrusion. Director Chen explained, pointing to a map where affected areas pulsed red with varying intensities. But here's the disturbing pattern. The attacks are probing specific vulnerabilities without triggering standard security alerts. They're using exactly the information from the law firm assessments to avoid detection systems. Marcus pulled up data from his company's monitoring tools, cross-referencing it with the federal analysis. They're not just using Derek's firm's information. Look at these access patterns. Someone is providing them with real-time updates about our defensive responses. Every time we patch a vulnerability, they shift to attacking a different vector within hours. The realization hit me like a physical blow. There's a mole in this operation. Someone with access to our defensive strategies is feeding information to the attackers in real time. Director Chen's face went pale. That's impossible. Only 12 people have access to the complete operational data, and all of them have been vetted repeatedly. Vet them again, I said firmly. Cross-reference their communication patterns, travel schedules, financial records, everything. Someone in this building is working for the other side. As if summoned by our conversation, Senator Blackwood entered the command center with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. I came as soon as I could get away from the estate safely, she announced. How bad is the situation? Director Chen briefed her on our discoveries, but I found myself studying the senator's reactions carefully. Her position on the Homeland Security Committee gave her access to every piece of information a mole would need, and her presence at Emma's engagement party could have been perfect cover for coordinating with foreign agents. Senator, I said carefully, we've determined that someone with high-level clearance is providing real-time intelligence to the attackers. We need to implement compartmentalized security protocols immediately. Agreed, she replied without hesitation. I'll coordinate with FBI counterintelligence to investigate anyone with access to sensitive operational data. Her response seemed genuine, but my training had taught me that the best moles were those who appeared most eager to help catch other moles. I made a mental note to have Marcus monitor her communications independently. My encrypted phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Agent Rodriguez's voice came through the secure connection tight with urgency. Charlene, we have a problem at the estate. Derek received another call from the foreign agents, and this time they made specific demands. What kind of demands? They want you to step down from the investigation immediately. In exchange, they'll leave your family alone and limit their election interference to what they call minor adjustments that won't affect the overall outcome. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of an impossible choice settling on my shoulders. And if I refuse? They've demonstrated detailed knowledge of the estate's layout security protocols and your family's personal schedules. They claim they can reach your sister and father regardless of FBI protection. Marcus, who had been listening to my side of the conversation, looked up from his workstation with alarm. Charlene, you can't seriously be considering their offer. I'm considering the fact that my family is in danger because of my job, I replied, though the words felt like admitting defeat before the battle had even begun. Senator Blackwood stepped closer, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. Charlene, I understand the personal cost, but you know we cannot negotiate with foreign agents who are attacking our electoral system. The precedent alone would be catastrophic. Easy for you to say. I snapped, exhaustion and stress overriding my usual diplomatic restraint. Your family isn't being threatened by people who know where they sleep and what they had for dinner. Actually, Senator Blackwood said quietly, my family is under exactly the same threat. Derek is my son, remember. If these agents are willing to target your loved ones, they've certainly identified mine as well. The reminder that we were all in danger together should have been comforting, but instead it reinforced how high the stakes had become. The foreign agents were not just attacking our election systems, they were attacking the personal relationships that gave our work meaning. Director Chen stepped between us before the argument could escalate. We have 36 hours until polls open across the country. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide quickly. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text message that made my blood freeze. It was a photograph of Emma and Derek walking through the estate's garden, clearly taken from close range, despite the FBI perimeter. The message was simple: 36 hours. Choose wisely. The foreign agents were not just threatening my family, they were demonstrating that they could reach them any time they wanted, regardless of federal protection. The photograph proved that their surveillance capabilities were far more sophisticated than we had realized. "They're inside the FBI perimeter," I said, showing the image to Director Chen and Senator Blackwood. Senator Blackwood studied the photograph with the analytical eye of someone trained in security protocols. This was taken from the East Garden, which means they somehow got past 3 layers of federal agents without triggering any alarms. "Professional intelligence operatives," Director Chen confirmed grimly. "We're not dealing with hackers who learned some tradecraft. These are experienced agents with resources and training that rival our own capabilities." The realization that we were facing opponents of our own caliber changed everything about the tactical situation. These were not criminals who could be intimidated or amateurs who would make mistakes under pressure. They were professionals who had been planning this operation for months and were prepared for every contingency we might attempt. "I need to speak with my family," I said, reaching for the secure phone. "Charlene, wait," Marcus said, his voice urgent. "Before you make any decisions, there's something else you need to see." He turned his laptop screen toward us, displaying a complex data visualization that tracked financial transactions across multiple international accounts. I've been running background analysis on the people who approached Derek's firm. The money trail leads back to accounts connected with election manipulation operations in 3 other countries over the past 2 years. "They've done this before," Senator Blackwood said, studying the data with growing alarm. "Successfully," Marcus confirmed. "Small adjustments to vote tallies that changed election outcomes without triggering widespread investigations. They've developed a methodology for stealing democracy without leaving obvious evidence." The weight of stopping an experienced team of election thieves settled on my shoulders like a lead blanket. But as I looked around the command center at the people working to protect American democracy, I realized that backing down would mean abandoning not just my duty, but everyone who believed their vote mattered. "Get me a secure line to the estate," I said, my decision crystallizing with painful clarity. "I need to explain to my family why I can't choose their safety over the safety of democracy itself." The call would be the hardest conversation of my life, but it was also the most important. Because sometimes protecting the people you love means making choices that put them in danger if those choices serve something larger than any individual family. Even when that family is your own and the danger is very real and the people threatening them have already proven they can reach anyone, anywhere, anytime they want. The secure line connected me directly to the FBI command post at the Blackwood estate, where Agent Rodriguez was coordinating protection for my family. Her voice carried the tension of someone managing a situation that was deteriorating rapidly. "Charlene, thank God. We need to brief you on new developments immediately." "What's happened?" I asked, though the tight feeling in my chest suggested I already knew the answer would be bad. Derek received another call an hour ago. This time they weren't making requests. They were issuing ultimatums. "You have 18 hours to withdraw from the investigation, or they move from surveillance to direct action against your family members." Through the secure connection, I could hear Emma's voice in the background, tight with fear and anger. "Let me talk to her," she was saying. "I need to talk to my sister." "Put her on," I said, bracing myself for a conversation I had hoped to avoid. Charlene, Emma's voice came through the encrypted connection with startling clarity. "What's really happening? The FBI agents won't tell us anything except that we're in danger because of your work." I closed my eyes, choosing my words carefully. "Foreign agents are trying to manipulate the upcoming election by altering vote tallies in multiple states. I'm part of the team trying to stop them, and they're threatening our family to pressure me into stepping down." "So step down," Emma said immediately. "Let someone else handle it. Why does it have to be you?" The simplicity of her logic was heartbreaking. "Because I'm one of the few people with the specific expertise needed to trace their attack vectors and develop effective countermeasures. If I withdraw, they might succeed in changing election results across multiple states. And if you don't withdraw, they might hurt us." Emma replied, her voice cracking with emotion. "Charlene, I'm scared. Derek is falling apart with guilt over accidentally helping them. Dad doesn't understand any of this, and I feel like I don't even know my own sister anymore. The pain in her voice cut through me like broken glass, but before I could respond, Marcus gestured urgently from his workstation. He discovered something critical. "Emma, I have to go, but I need you to know that I love you, and everything I'm doing is to protect not just our family, but every family in America whose votes might be stolen." "That's not good enough," she said, but the line had already disconnected. Marcus showed me his laptop screen where a new data visualization revealed a pattern that changed everything about our understanding of the attack. "Charlene, look at this. The foreign agents aren't just trying to alter vote tallies, they're preparing to make it look like their targets won legitimately." The implications hit me immediately. Sophisticated election manipulation that creates plausible deniability. Exactly. Small adjustments in carefully selected precincts that fall within expected statistical margins. Even if someone investigates afterward, the changes would be difficult to distinguish from normal voting patterns. Director Chen joined us at the workstation, studying Marcus's analysis with growing concern. "How small are we talking about?" 2 to 3% changes in about 40 key precincts across 7 swing states, Marcus replied. "Not enough to trigger automatic recounts, but sufficient to flip close elections if the targeting is precise." "They're not trying to steal a landslide," I realized. "They're trying to steal a photo finish in a way that looks like natural variation." Senator Blackwood, who had been on a secure call with FBI headquarters, rejoined our group with information that made the situation even more complex. "Counterintelligence has identified the mole," she announced. "It's someone with access to our operational planning who has been feeding real-time intelligence to the foreign team." Who Director Chen asked, though her voice suggested she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. "Assistant Director Michael Patterson from the Cybersecurity Division. He's been passing along our defensive strategies, our investigation progress, and our personnel assignments. The foreign agents have known every move we've made before we made it." The revelation explained how the attackers had stayed ahead of our countermeasures and why their operation seemed so perfectly coordinated. They had been receiving inside information from someone with access to our highest level planning sessions. "Where is Patterson now?" I asked. "FBI is attempting to locate him for arrest, but he disappeared from his office 6 hours ago. His last known communication was a text message to an encrypted number that we believe belongs to the Foreign Operations Command Structure." Marcus looked up from his laptop with alarm. "If Patterson has been feeding them intelligence about our investigation, they know exactly how close we are to stopping them. Which means they'll accelerate their timeline." I said, the tactical implications becoming clear. "They can't wait until Election Day if they think we might expose them first." As if summoned by our conversation, my encrypted phone rang with another call from the unknown number. This time I put it on speaker so the entire team could hear the foreign agent's voice. "Ms. Hoffman," the accented voice said with cold politeness. "I trust you have considered our generous offer to limit our activities in exchange for your withdrawal from this investigation." "I've considered it," I replied carefully, "but I need more details about what you're proposing." "Simple. You and your team cease all defensive activities related to our operation. We complete our work with minimal impact on overall election results. Your family returns to their normal lives without interference from us." Senator Blackwood gestured for me to keep him talking while she coordinated trace attempts on the call. "How do I know you'll keep your word about limiting the impact?" "Because massive disruption serves no one's interests," the voice replied. "We seek influence, not chaos. Small adjustments that achieve our strategic objectives while maintaining the appearance of legitimate democratic processes. And if I refuse, then your sister Emma and your father Robert will discover that FBI protection has limitations when faced by professionals with sufficient motivation and resources." The threat was crystal clear, but something in the agent's tone suggested they were operating under time pressure as well. "How long do I have to decide?" 6 hours, the voice said. After that, we proceed with our complete operational plan regardless of consequences to your family or to American electoral integrity. The line went dead, leaving us staring at each other in the sudden silence. 6 hours to choose between saving my family and saving American democracy. But as I looked around the command center at the people working to protect the electoral process that millions of Americans trusted, I realized the choice was not really between my family and my country. It was between accepting defeat and finding a way to win that protected both. I have an idea. I said, my mind already working through the tactical possibilities, but it's dangerous and it requires us to use ourselves as bait. Director Chen leaned forward with interest. What kind of bait? The kind that makes the foreign agents think they've won while we gather enough evidence to expose their entire operation and arrest everyone involved. Marcus smiled grimly, including Assistant Director Patterson, especially Assistant Director Patterson, I confirmed, because the best way to catch a mole is to give him exactly the information he wants to pass along and then follow it back to its destination. The plan that formed in my mind was risky enough to get us all killed, but it was also the only strategy that offered a chance to save both my family and the election. Sometimes the most dangerous path is also the only path that leads to victory. Here's what we're going to do, I said, and began outlining a counterintelligence operation that would either expose the entire foreign election manipulation network or get us all arrested for treason. There was no middle ground and no time for second thoughts. The counterintelligence operation began at dawn with Marcus and me setting up a false flag scenario designed to make the foreign agents believe their intimidation had worked. Using carefully crafted communications that we knew Patterson would intercept and pass along, we created the illusion that I was preparing to withdraw from the investigation in exchange for my family's safety. Send this message through official channels, I told Director Chen, handing her a resignation letter that looked genuine but contained subtle code words that would alert loyal FBI agents to our real intentions. Make sure it reaches Patterson's desk within the hour. Meanwhile, Marcus established a fake vulnerability in one of the election systems we were supposedly abandoning, creating an irresistible target that would draw the foreign hackers into a digital trap we had prepared. The vulnerability looked real enough to fool professional analysts, but it was actually a honeypot designed to capture evidence of their attack methods. They'll think we've given up and left them an easy opening, Marcus explained to the team of FBI agents who would be monitoring the trap. When they attempt to exploit the vulnerability, we'll capture not just their attack code, but their communication protocols and command structure. Senator Blackwood coordinated with state election officials to implement emergency security protocols that appeared to be routine maintenance, but actually hardened the systems against the exact attack vectors we expected. To any external observer, including Patterson, it would look like normal pre-election preparation rather than targeted countermeasures. The most dangerous part of the plan involved me personally meeting with the foreign agents to negotiate my withdrawal from the investigation. The meeting would be recorded by FBI surveillance teams, but I would be essentially defenseless if the agents decided to eliminate me instead of accepting my apparent capitulation. "This is insane," Emma said when I called to explain the plan. "You're going to walk into a meeting with people who have been threatening to kill us. They won't hurt me if they think I'm giving them what they want," I replied, though I was not entirely convinced of that myself. "The goal is to make them believe they've won while we gather evidence to arrest them all. And if something goes wrong, then you'll be safe. Dad will be safe, and the election will be protected by the people taking over my work." I paused, trying to find words for feelings I had never learned to express. "Emma, I need you to know that having you as my sister has been the best part of my life, even when we didn't understand each other. Don't talk like you're saying goodbye," she said, her voice thick with tears. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," I said, though we both knew it was a promise I might not be able to keep. The meeting location was a parking garage in downtown Washington chosen because it offered multiple exit routes and clear sight lines for FBI surveillance teams. I arrived in my meal kit van maintaining operational cover, even though the foreign agents almost certainly knew my real identity by now. Two men waited beside a black sedan, their appearance perfectly ordinary except for the alert posture that marked them as professionals. The older man, who I recognized as the voice from our phone conversations, approached my van with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being in control. "Ms. Hoffman," he said politely, "I am pleased that you have decided to be reasonable about this situation. I want guarantees about my family's safety." I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing pulse. "And I want details about exactly what you're planning to do to the election systems." "Your family will be completely safe once you officially withdraw from the investigation and your team ceases all defensive activities," he assured me. "As for our plans, you understand that operational security prevents me from sharing details." "I need something more concrete than vague assurances," I pressed. "How do I know you won't expand your operation once I'm out of the picture?" The second man, younger and more obviously impatient, stepped forward. "Perhaps we should simply eliminate the problem, rather than negotiating with someone who clearly cannot be trusted." "Patience," the older man said calmly. "Ms. Hoffman is being cautious, which shows intelligence. We prefer intelligent partners to dead enemies." The admission that they viewed me as a potential partner rather than just an obstacle was exactly the kind of evidence the FBI surveillance teams needed to document the scope of their operation. I kept talking, drawing out more details about their plans and organization. "My team has identified vulnerabilities in the systems of 14 states, I said. "If I withdraw, you'll need some way to exploit those vulnerabilities without triggering the security protocols we've already implemented. That is precisely why your cooperation is so valuable," the older man replied. "With your assistance, we can complete our work efficiently and without detection. Without your cooperation, we would be forced to use more disruptive methods that might draw unwanted attention." "What kind of assistance?" "Access codes for the security systems you have helped design, scheduling information for when those systems are most vulnerable. Perhaps most importantly, your continued silence about our activities." The conversation continued for 20 minutes with the foreign agents revealing details about their operation that would provide the FBI with enough evidence to dismantle the entire network. They described safe houses in 3 states, communication protocols that connected them to handlers in Eastern Europe, and financial arrangements that trace back to foreign intelligence services. Most importantly, they revealed that Assistant Director Patterson was not their only source inside the government. They had cultivated assets in the State Department, the Treasury Department, and even the White House staff, creating a network of influence that extended far beyond election manipulation. "Your mole has been very helpful," I said, fishing for more details about Patterson's role. "Which one?" the older man asked with amusement. "We have found Americans to be quite receptive to financial incentives, especially those who feel underappreciated by their government employers. The casual admission of multiple moles would give FBI counterintelligence the justification they needed to conduct a comprehensive investigation of foreign infiltration across the entire government." As the meeting concluded, I handed over fabricated access codes that would appear to give them entry to election systems, but would actually trigger additional security alerts. The foreign agents left, believing they had successfully compromised the investigation, while FBI surveillance teams followed them to identify additional operatives and communication methods. Within 6 hours, coordinated arrests began across multiple states. Assistant Director Patterson was taken into custody at a safe house in Maryland, along with 3 other government employees who had been selling classified information. The foreign agents from my meeting were arrested at a private airfield where they were attempting to leave the country. Most importantly, the election systems remained secure. The vulnerabilities the foreign agents had attempted to exploit were neutralized, their attack code was analyzed and countered, and backup verification protocols ensured that every vote would be accurately counted. Emma called me as the last arrests were being made, her voice filled with relief and pride. "Is it over?" "It's over," I confirmed. "The election will happen safely, the foreign agents are in custody, and our family is secure. I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I never understood what you were really doing, and I'm sorry for not supporting you the way I should have." "You don't owe me anything, Em. You were trying to protect our family, and that's exactly what a good sister should do." Dad took the phone from Emma, his voice carrying emotions he rarely expressed. "Charlene, I need to tell you something. I've been wrong about your work for years, and I'm ashamed that it took a national crisis for me to understand how important your job really is." "Dad, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted. "When reporters ask me about my daughter now, I'm going to tell them the truth. Not that you deliver meal kits, but that you deliver democracy itself to every American who believes their vote matters." The press conference that followed revealed the scope of the foreign operation without compromising ongoing counterintelligence work. Senator Blackwood, speaking on behalf of the Homeland Security Committee, praised the team that had stopped the attack while being careful not to reveal operational details that might help future adversaries. "The American people should know that there are dedicated professionals working every day to protect our democratic processes," she said, looking directly at me as she spoke. "Their work often goes unrecognized, but it is essential to maintaining the freedoms we all cherish." Derek, cleared of any criminal wrongdoing but deeply affected by his unwitting role in the operation, decided to leave his law firm and dedicate his career to legitimate cybersecurity work, protecting democratic institutions. "I want to spend the rest of my professional life making up for the mistake I made," he told Emma. Marcus, whose emergency clearance had been made permanent due to his contributions to the operation, established a partnership between his company and the Department of Homeland Security to develop next-generation election security protocols. "This won't be the last time foreign agents try to manipulate our elections," he said. "We need to stay ahead of them." Election Day proceeded without incident, with voter turnout reaching record levels as Americans demonstrated their commitment to democratic participation despite the threats that had been neutralized. The knowledge that foreign agents had tried to steal their votes seemed to strengthen rather than weaken public faith in the electoral process. 3 months later, at Emma's rescheduled wedding, I walked her down the aisle in place of our father, who had insisted that the honor should go to the daughter who saved democracy. The ceremony took place at a small church in our hometown, rather than the country club originally planned, but Emma said she preferred the intimacy of a gathering focused on love rather than status. During the reception, Dad stood to give a toast that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "I spent years not understanding what my daughter Charlene really did for work," he said, raising his glass toward me. "I thought she just delivered meal kits from a van. Tonight I want everyone to know the truth. My daughter doesn't just deliver meals. She delivers what Americans need most, the confidence that their votes will be counted honestly, and their democracy will be protected by people who believe in something larger than themselves." Marcus, who had become much more than a professional colleague during our weeks of working together, asked me to dance as the band played a gentle waltz. "So," he said, as we moved across the dance floor, "what happens now that you've saved American democracy? Do you get a vacation?" "I go back to work," I replied, though I was smiling as I said it. "There will always be people who want to undermine democratic institutions. My job is to make sure they don't succeed." "And the meal kit delivery—" "Perfect cover for a cybersecurity consultant," I said. "Nobody suspects the woman dropping off dinner ingredients of protecting election systems." As the evening wound down, I found myself standing in the church parking lot with Emma looking up at stars that seemed brighter than they had in months. The crisis that had nearly destroyed her engagement party had ultimately brought our family closer together and given us a deeper appreciation for the freedoms we had always taken for granted. I'm proud to be your sister, Emma said, linking her arm through mine. Even when I don't understand your work, I'm proud of what you do and who you are. The feeling is mutual, I replied. You showed more courage during this crisis than most people would in a lifetime. The lesson that emerged from those terrifying weeks was one that would stay with me for the rest of my career. Sometimes the most important work happens in the shadows, performed by people others dismiss as ordinary. True heroism is not about recognition or appreciation. It is about serving something greater than yourself, even when no one sees the sacrifice you are making. Democracy survives because there are people willing to protect it, often at great personal cost and usually without public acknowledgement. The meal kit delivery van parked beside the church looked exactly like what everyone believed it was, but it represented something far more important, the quiet dedication of ordinary Americans who do extraordinary things to preserve the freedoms that make our way of life possible. As I drove home that night, I thought about the thousands of election workers, cybersecurity analysts, intelligence officers, and other professionals who would be back at work tomorrow morning, protecting democracy, one technical detail at a time. Their names would never appear in history books, but their work ensures that future generations will inherit the same freedoms we had been given. That is the real meaning of service, not the grand gestures that make headlines, but the daily commitment to something larger than yourself, performed with skill and integrity, even when no one is watching. Sometimes the person who delivers what you need most is someone you would never suspect. Sometimes heroes drive vans and wear ordinary clothes and solve problems you never knew existed. And sometimes saving democracy is as simple as refusing to let bad people win no matter what they threaten to take away from you. My phone buzzed with a new assignment as I pulled into my driveway, and I smiled as I read the briefing. There would always be more work to do, more threats to investigate, and more elections to protect. That was not a burden. It was a privilege. After all, somebody has to deliver democracy, and I happen to be very good at my job. What challenges have you faced when people underestimated your abilities or dismissed your contributions? I believe many of us have experienced moments when our true value was not recognized, whether in our careers, families, or communities. Share your story in the comments below about a time when you proved people wrong about what you could accomplish. If this story of hidden strength and quiet heroism resonated with you, please like this video to help others discover it. Subscribe to stay connected with more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things to protect what matters most. And please share this with someone who needs to be reminded that real heroes often work in the shadows, unrecognized but essential. Thank you for watching, and may you always find the courage to serve something greater than yourself, even when no one sees the sacrifice you are making.